Dark Souls Remastered, the mod that adds guns to Dark Souls, also adds quite a few other interesting and fun weapons, and I want to cover one of those today that you might not have heard of before, or you just forgot about it. I like it though because it's silly to beat Dark Souls with only a stick. This run started as fist only because your fist is slightly buffed in this mod, and I might end up doing that eventually, but I genuinely just didn't want to deal with doing no damage right now. Grabbed the spoon from the cell, which is another idea for a full playthrough, did barely any more damage to the Asylum Demon, and went on my way to buy the stick from the Undead Merchant. The merchant is just as easy to get to as normal, so I sprinted through the burg wielding my spoon, used the souls from the demon to buy the stick, and now we can actually start the run. Nearly every weapon in Remastered was given an extra attack, like a weapon art. The vast majority of the time, it's just a parry, unsheath, something simple. The spoon has Lion's Claw, the front flip attack Artorias uses, but the stick throws an I'm sorry carving that actually does a decent chunk of damage.
I'm sorry.
Don't get me wrong, the damage isn't good. It's only 60 to these hollows in the burg, and I don't think this attack gets any scaling, but it's still decent damage. It's very useful in certain scenarios, like when you don't want to go into the middle of a group of enemies that could shred you if you're not careful. Constantly hearing, "I'm sorry," as a group of enemies dies in the distance is also pretty funny. Aside from that, the stick is kind of a hybrid of the club and the broadsword in its moveset. It has S scaling and strength, and is upgraded with Twinkling Titanite, which doesn't really come into play just yet. Suffice it to say that I will be leveling strength to the soft cap, then pretty much only vitality and endurance. The rest of the burg isn't much of an issue. I started as a bandit, so my strength is high enough that the stick is one-shotting most enemies right now. As for the Black Knight, the riposte on the stick does very little damage. You can riposte, but one-handed only does 10 damage for me, and a two-handed riposte only does 15. Luckily, the Black Knights are slow enough that you can easily parry, back up, two-hand swing, then get back into position to parry again, but I can't imagine that bodes well for Gwyn in the future. I made sure to get hit by the flaming barrel entirely on purpose for comedic value, grab the Twinkling Titanite, and head in to fight the Taurus Demon. I was kinda worried the plunging attack would be worthless, like the riposte, which didn't end up being entirely true. It did good damage, but I got stuck in a corner and crushed without a chance to really do anything else. I decided to grab the gold pine resin before heading back in, which is super easy to do on this mod without any keys because of the squirrel ring, a modded item you can find just before entering the aqueduct from Firelink Shrine. It lets you jump super high. I don't have the master key because it's not available as a starting gift in this mod, and I didn't want to start as the thief, but that shouldn't affect the majority of the run. Some vanilla rings are also changed, like the Ring of Favor and Protection being nerfed into the ground, and the Tiny Beings ring actually being useful because it offers regen that I think is better than the base game Sanctus. Anyway, the Taurus Demon went down pretty easily after another plunging attack, this time with lightning, and being a bit more careful to not get trapped in the corner. Running past the Drake works exactly the same as vanilla, thankfully. Initially, I thought the stick was upgraded with normal Titanite, so I fought the Greatsword Black Knight, and it went down pretty easily without even trying to parry it, which is definitely a first for me. Running past the boar through the portcullis was pretty easy, like usual, but I did try to go back and fight the boar. The stick bounces, which is really weird, but not really significant, I suppose. That said, I don't think I can backstab at all. I tried pretty hard with the boar, and it just didn't work. On my way to grab the Twinkling Titanite from the lizard down near the basin, I took out the Titanite demon for some extra souls extremely easily, even at only a +2. I don't think this run will be as hard as I was expecting, but I suppose we're about 30 minutes into the run, so it's hard to say. A stick +3 would have been more than enough to face the Gargoyles, but I was greedy and wanted more, so I took out a lot of Ents to get one of each of the 3 mosses to trade for Titanite from Snuggly. I also grabbed the red Tearstone ring for later, just in case the damage doesn't keep up. Since I was down here anyway, and don't have the master key, I figured it'd be easier to go into Blighttown now, so I don't have to come all the way back later, and that ended up being the right choice. A +3 is pretty standard for Quelaag, even though I'm using a literal stick, especially when using the red Tearstone ring for some extra damage. Getting into RTSR range with poison with a ring on that constantly heals you is a little more impossible than I was expecting, but I remember to take it off eventually. The projectile does 150 damage to her, but each swing does a solid 300, which is more than enough to make a joke of Quelaag pretty quickly. Obviously, I went down and smacked Ceaseless off a ledge with my stick for some extra souls as well. I think 17 Vitality, 20 Endurance, and 27 Strength is plenty to take on the Gargoyles, even without the RTSR buff, but it's more fun with it. The projectile made short work of the crowd of hollows before the fight. It has slight splash damage, which is kinda weird, but I'm not complaining at all. I guess arrows also have that in this game. Also, as a slight tangent, I realized I should take out Lautrec now so he doesn't kill Anastasia. So I ran down, grabbed the mystery key, and ran back up. The first gargoyle goes down in 4 hits, barely getting a chance to attack, and the second makes the mistake of breathing fire and letting me get behind it to attack with no repercussions. That's both bells down already, and I'm feeling good. Hopefully this momentum keeps up. I think it's hilarious to be able to breeze through Dark Souls with nothing but a stick. Don't get me wrong, it's not an incredible weapon, you'd probably get better performance from the club, but this not being that bad is still great. I forgot Lautrec. I grabbed the key and went straight to the gargoyles, which means Anastasia died anyway. Oops. Oh well, I guess. Firelink isn't that important for now. I went to trade my moss before Sen's Fortress and got my stick up to +4. The projectile made short work of the torch hollows, thankfully, so I didn't really have to deal with them. I'll be back for the stray demon later, though. I kinda just sprinted through Sen's Fortress, not even picking up the large shards since I don't really need them for this run. But of the couple enemies I did deal with, it was still really easy. I didn't even worry about the giant throwing firebombs. The strong attack does 250 damage a hit, meaning 2 will easily stagger the golem, and a third attack will knock it down, plummeting to its demise at the hands of a mad woman wielding nothing but a cool stick she found. I think this might be one of my favorite runs I've ever done just because of that. I didn't really bother fighting most enemies here. I didn't even fight any pain guardians because I got lucky while running past. The gargoyles are really easy to ignore, the sentinels are the same, and the only hit I took was from the batwing demon stabbing me in the back on my way past. The Silver Knight Archer goes down to a couple swings after a parry, and we can make our way into the chapel. From there, I used the souls I kept from the Iron Golem to buy the rest of the Twinkling Titanite I needed from the blacksmith. Finally, the ultimate stick. Do you think it's one of the ones that make your hands hurt when you smack it against something really hard? I used to swing sticks around all the time as a kid, and I vividly remember hitting things just hurting really bad. Oh, that's why it bounced off the boar earlier. I used a bone, used the rest of my souls to get 20 vitality and 31 strength, and it's off to fight Ornstein and Smo. I got into RTSR range by jumping off the stairs a couple times, not because I needed it, the stick still does decent damage to them, but because I thought it would be funny. Again, the damage isn't amazing, but it's shockingly good for a modded joke weapon. As for the fight itself, it did take a couple tries. I'm still not amazing at fighting the comedy duo hitless, despite my 1,000 hours, but it wasn't that bad. The first phase just consisted of a little extra caution than I really needed, as well as some greed the couple times I died. And the second just took a bit of reading what Smo was doing, making sure he wouldn't sit on me. Also, I just want to point out that using a stick as my weapon affords so many opportunities for innuendos, and I hope you're proud of me for sticking it out and not making them. Sticking it out. That one wasn't even on purpose. Wait, that can be taken as an innuendo. Since I want to fight all the bosses, I need to grab the doll at some point soon, so I might as well do that now. The torch hollows are easy because they go down to a few I'm sorries, and the stray demon isn't an issue. It's slower than it would be if I could proc bleed, but it's faster than I expected with using, a stick to beat it up. While dealing with earlier game bosses, the Capra Demon is an easy target. I went out of bounds so I could try and cheese it, partially because it's way easier with the scroll ring, and also just because it's kind of funny. Getting into the arena worked just like normal. I took out the dogs with no opposition, but you can't actually damage the Capra Demon before you activate the boss fight. This is just a change made in Remastest. The same thing happens with every enemy like this, but the Capra Demon without the dogs is barely a boss fight, so there's not much else to mention. I'm also going to go ahead and fight the Gaping Dragon now too. The scroll ring means the frame rate is a non-issue when jumping over the banister to reach the hole to skip most of the depths, though I did forget the key to open the bonfire. Granted, I beat the dragon first try anyway, so it didn't matter. Actually, honestly, I was kind of surprised at the damage. It's shockingly good for this being a stick. There's only one more early game boss I need to take care of though, the butterfly. I think this will be at least a little bit interesting since I have a ranged attack I can use and it won't just be me waiting the entire time. That ended up being mostly correct. I actually kind of enjoyed the fight. I got her health down to just over half to prevent the second phase, since some of the attacks in the second phase are really annoying, then took it out once it finally landed. A butterfly fight with strategy is one of my favorite things in the game. Since I'm already in the garden, I want to fight the Hydra now so I don't forget later. Somehow, a single strong attack is able to chop off a head, which made this fight a lot shorter than I expected. The final head over the water also wasn't much of an issue because of the ranged attack, which was really nice. The Golden Golem took more time than I wanted because it's out in the water, but it's not like it was a hard fight. From there, we can climb up the ladder and run to Sif without the crest. I'm very used to fighting Sif like this, even with the low damage, so it was pretty easy, but unfortunately I couldn't prevent her from limping. She was oddly calm this fight. Normally she jumps around a ton, but this time she just kinda sat there, doing a spin attack or two. The wide sweep of the strong attack made her thigh gaps not matter either. Out of habit, I want to go fight the 4 kings since I have the Covenant now, and also so I can place the Lord Vessel without a chance to forget. The Squirrel Ring lets you skip most of the first half of the top of New Londo with a simple jump. Running around the top of the ghost house lets us climb the ladder for free since it distracts the ghost and gets us a nice rare ring of sacrifice for later too. From there, draining the level is easy, then another Squirrel Ring jump skips most of Lower New Londo as well. I haven't really experimented with this ring much, but I know the layout of this level enough to know that these significant skips exist, even if I wasn't sure if they would work initially. I'm really glad they did. This is really nice knowledge to have for future remaster test runs. Anyway, the four kings were mildly interesting. Blocking their tracking magic with the stick worked shockingly well, then getting hit by the sour spots of the weapon a couple times to get into RTSR range made the fight go so much quicker. This is usually how I do this fight, but it really comes to a head here, I think. The damage is low, so RTSR is really important to not getting overwhelmed by kings. Healing between each king, in case they use the tracking magic, works really well too. Being able to take out the 4 kings in only 3 kings with a stick is probably one of my favorite things to happen in a run I've done for this channel to this point. Alright, time for the other 2 properly optional bosses. Most of the Painted World can be skipped without the Squirrel Ring, and the rest can easily be run past. The most significant part of the level itself was actually taking out the archers before Priscilla, since I never do that and I always get shot in the back. The stick doesn't stagger very easily, so making Priscilla visible took a lot longer than usual, but I don't think that made the fight any harder. Gwyndolin only took 3 cycles, which, at the risk of sounding repetitive, was surprising given the fact that I'm using a stick. There's probably another innuendo here given, well, Gwyndolin, but I will do my best to not make it. Since we're so close, the Duke's Archives are up next. I like to do them now anyway so I don't forget the pendant. For some reason, the first strong attack doesn't bounce off of the boars, but the second does? I'm not really sure why, I didn't know that was possible, but as long as you keep that in mind, it's not really a threat. The stick can't backstab, but that doesn't really make the crystal hollows that much more difficult. A strong attack nearly obliterates their entire health bar, and there's only a few you need to take out so you can safely deal with the golem. From there, sprinting to Seath is easy, even if riposting the crystal guy is ineffective. This is the perfect and kinda only useful case for the rare ring of sacrifice. As much as I'd love to backstab the Pasakas with my stick and make some sort of innuendo for the stream enjoyers, I can't actually backstab them in this mod for whatever reason. I did, however, get penetrated by one to make up for it. I played really cautiously around the man-serpents near the key since I usually riposte them and take heavy advantage of the iframes, but that's not really viable with the stick. I was still able to get the key first try, but it was a little dodgy a couple times. The rest of the archives consists almost entirely of sprinting to Seath. Nothing of note happens in between. It's part of the reason Seath is my least favorite boss in this game. Every throw of the carving stunned the clam that got into the fight, so that was pretty funny, but it did almost get me killed because I wasn't paying attention. Seath is also weak to strike damage, meaning this fight is over very quickly. 614 damage every attack seems excessive for a stick, but I'm not complaining. Next up is Lost Izalith because I want a couple more levels before fighting Nito. On the way down, I started throwing carvings at a worm and it grabbed me? That's been a grab attack this entire time? I've never actually been hit by that, so I had no idea. That's kind of funny, actually. Anyway, the Demon Fire Sage jumps around a bit more than the Stray Demon, but that doesn't make it much harder. I got unlucky with its first attack, but the explosion didn't actually do that much damage with the soft humanity and armor that I have, and the Tiny Beings Ring actually restored my health a significant amount. The Centipede Demon is actually kind of an interesting fight, just because of how many ways there are to tackle it. Initially, I lured it onto the starting platform and used the red Tearstone Ring to take out half its health almost immediately, including cutting off the arm, but I ended up dying, so I used that opportunity to use the orange Charred Ring. I still went in with RTSR range to cut off the arm, but after that I healed up and started just normally fighting in the lava, which I hardly ever do. I also think this was my first or second time ever cutting off the tail. I forget you can because I never go for it because it's kind of pointless. The bed itself was pretty fun. I actually enjoy the Bed of Chaos. There's another innuendo there, isn't there? I won't make it. I must resist. Run to the right, break the thing, run to the left. This time the jump was really easy because of the squirrel ring. Hit the other thing, and run to the middle with the strategy that works literally 100% of the time. All you do is wait behind the first tree thing until it stabs with the sides, run forward, dodge through the fingers during the swipes, then run to the middle. I've never had it fail before. Obviously, I'm just going to drop through the catacombs on my way to Nito. I accidentally got into red Tearstone range by getting hit by one of Pinwheel's fireballs, but that just ended the fight faster. Also, it turns out that the mod makes the Mask of the Mother into a debuff. I'm not sure if that's true of the other masks, but I think it's funny regardless. There's not much to see on the way to Nito. That's supposed to be a joke, but I don't know if it landed. Anyway, those extra couple levels were apparently helpful. I ended up beating Nito on my first try thanks to my health, poise, and decent damage from the strong attacks on the stick. Not much notable here that's different from a normal fight with Nito. The lacking damage from the stick became pretty apparent in the DLC, but I'm honestly not complaining. The Sanctuary Guardian is my favorite boss in all of Dark Souls, so getting to fight it for longer is only good. I also don't think it'll be an issue for the other bosses. Artorias is pretty easy after all this time playing the game. Manus gives plenty of time to attack, and Calamy is weak to strike damage. Strong attacks are pretty useful against the Guardian for their damage, assuming you have time to land them, but as long as you actually pick your attack opportunities, it shouldn't be too difficult. As much as I like Artorias, I definitely wouldn't class him among my favorites, only because the fight is very samey every time you do it, a problem the Sanctuary Guardian doesn't have because of its switch-ups with the lightning. I did end up dying once to Artorias to one of the worst hitboxes I've ever seen in this game that wasn't tied to the Gaping Dragon, Ceaseless, or the Centipede Demon. I was able to come back and take my revenge, luckily. It's really just a case of being patient and taking guaranteed attack opportunities and not getting greedy to normal stuff. You can also knock him out of the buff with 3 strong attacks as long as you have the time. Throwing carvings at him might have actually been a better idea though, I'm not sure. Grabbing the key from the Mimic was luckily a non-issue. It only had the opportunity to attack once, and the hardest part of the DLC went shockingly well. I got pretty lucky with the Sorcerers not using Dark Orb. The armor also definitely helps a lot. Manus is, well, Manus. Usually I use jump attacks during my attack opportunities, but in this instance, I think using 2 strong attacks ended up being better. I had enough stamina that it wasn't really an issue. Otherwise, he didn't really do anything special. He used his shotgun in a way that was really easy to avoid, the rain attack only once, and the ring attack only once. He did use his combo a couple times, but nothing I couldn't handle. I was a little worried about getting greedy near the end of the fight, and probably took a little bit longer than it needed to, but I did come out successful on my first try. Finally, time for Calamy. He actually used to be my favorite boss in the game by quite a wide margin, but over time I just ended up liking the Guardian more. The fight didn't start off super great. I got greedy and took some pointless risks, but once I got back into the groove, the damage was pretty good. Slaying a dragon with nothing but a stick seems a lot more achievable now at least. Calamy is a lot easier than most people seem to think he is, especially if you dodge backward from the neck swipes, bait out the tail slam when he does the dive and attack his legs so you don't cut off the tail, run toward him when he breathes fire, or whatever. You really just need to know the right responses to his attacks, and they're honestly pretty obvious if you know what to look for. I was able to take out Calamy successfully on my first try, truly coming a long way from the lowly hollow who bought a cool stick from a merchant so long ago. Somehow, Gwyn ended up being one of, if not the hardest boss in this entire run. The riposte damage was so little that I kinda just figured it wasn't really worth it. Spamming the throw almost makes him constantly dodge like the faster bow fire rate in this mod, but it's a little too slow to be actually useful, unfortunately. Eventually, I realized that trying to parry at all was pretty useless after the initial jump attack, and the fight started going much better. I just barely had the amount of health to pull off the dodges that I'm very not used to and take down the Lord of Cinder with nothing but a stick. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I love you all. I especially want to thank Lilith the Hammer Witch, Nick Possum, Ratini, Frankie, Krista, Howling Nocturne, Ryasune21, Rakuna, White Flame, Manarok, and Ryan Rickard. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. I don't know how to end this.